Welcome back to the Matside, the podcast at intermatwrestle.com. It's not really a podcast because it's all on YouTube. As we said last week, we are going to break down the Super 32 because Clay convinced me to do it. I'm your host, Richard Harrison Mann, and joining me, the aforementioned Clay Sauertig. Clay, how's it going?
Pretty good. We are entering my wheelhouse this week at my request. If your thought is, wow, Clay really looks redacted right now, it is 50 degrees in central Pennsylvania. It has been raining all day. Yeah, I agree with you. I feel that way as well. But really looking forward to discuss some high school wrestling and Super 32, which is always one of my favorite events of the year.
That is right. We are going to break it down in the attempts to break down everything going on in the wrestling world. As I have been saying every week, if you like the video, like it. If you want to subscribe. So I guess we will start at 106, unless there's anything you want to get off your chest right off the bat.
Not off the top of my head, just really looking forward to getting into some of these matches and talk about some of these kids that were really impressive.
All right, so in the 106-pound final, Vincent Kilkeary taking on Braeden Davis. We lost the first part of this match because Flo did not start the broadcast. By the time the match started, Kilkeary had a 2-1 lead, which I assume was a takedown and escape. After that, in the third period, Kilkeary added another takedown off a whiffed headlock by Davis, and he takes the match 5-2. And I will say, Davis's corner was absolutely insane and yelling and screaming.
Yes,
so that was
very loud.
There were a lot of crazy corners, and I think, as I get more and more into the high school wrestling, I think that there are some crazier coaches and parents at the high school level, and I think this was a very good example of that.
Just 6 minutes of sustained, very effusive coaching. But so Braeden Davis coming into this as I want to say former Fargo champ at 88 pounds in middle school, 100 pounds then was either a champ or runner-up a couple years ago against state champion Vincent Kilkeary. Kilkeary lost 7 matches last year and then got to the PA state tournament and just went bananas. And is obviously coming into his own, was able to hold 106 as a sophomore, which, as we know, can be a bit of a benefit as kids mature to be able to kind of keep that weight. So he looked really good, looked a little stronger than Davis. Again, we didn't get to see the first takedown, but from that point on, it really looked like Davis was kind of chasing the match and was never really able to get to anything. I thought it was a little early, kind of throw what looks like a Hail Mary headlock a little around a minute ago. But I think Kilkeary, having been in those battles, like the PA 106 AAA bracket last year was absolutely loaded. And he really had to go through a gauntlet to get to win that title. And I think kind of that experience shown through in a match like this.
Yeah, I thought Kilkeary looked very long and rangy, especially for 106. He did put himself in some trouble on the bottom, kind of almost stuck himself on a Granby roll. But I thought with the exception of that, he was able to control the match. Davis did kind of go YOLO for the headlock relatively early in the third period, which kind of took the match away from him. But, good scrambling, good action like to see from 106 pounders. All right, so let's move up to 113. And I think one of the stories of this tournament was PJ Duke, still in 8th grade, makes the finals here at 113 against Caden Horwath. Horwath.
I think it's Horwath.
Okay.
I think we're on with the dub.
All right, so Horwath, he hit a very nice underhook to a fake to a spin behind. I'm a big sucker for short offense, and I think he had a couple nice takedowns that way in this one as well. Duke did ride pretty tough in the third period after scoring a reversal, but it was not enough, and Duke was able to Horwath was able to get away and take the 4-3 victory. They did challenge at the end, but I think it was pretty clear where the escape came from.
So Duke is an 8th grader who obviously made a number of waves. Recently had a win over Steve O'Poolen that kind of opened a ton of eyes. Anytime you take down a top 10 or so pound for pound kid as an 8th grader, you're going to make some waves. Looked really good throughout the tournament. Horwath is a former Fargo finalist as well, I believe. People can check me on that, but I'm pretty sure. Also from Michigan, like Braeden Davis. Looks really good. I think what we tend to do with kids like Duke, who I think is fantastic and going to be fantastic, is we shove a lot of expectations and pressure on them really quickly. So I think I'd like to pump the brakes here, not because I don't think that PJ Duke is incredible, but because I think it's kind of unfair to the kid, 13, 14 years old say, oh, he's going to do A, B, and C, but at least coming through his first high school level tournament of this level, I was very, very impressed. And then Horwath just kind of looked in the final like a kid that had been in those positions a little bit more and wrestled that competition. I thought he wrestled a very smart match.
Yeah, I thought he had a unique style in some of the early rounds. He really did a lot of underhook, overhook stuff, kind of like a judo thing. I heard that on the broadcast they said he had a judo background. In his corner, Olympic gold medalist and UFC champion Henry Cejudo, which is always good to see. But yeah, I thought Horwath's ability to get out at the end of the match really, sealed it. He kind of messed up giving up that reversal. But overall, I thought it was a good showing for both guys. And you do bring up the fact that he's an 8th grader. I think he is now the top of the junior high rankings on Intermat. And with the fact that wrestling is based on weight classes, we are always going to have guys who seemingly, achieve beyond their years. And I think that it's always good to temper expectations because, God knows what I was doing when I was in 8th grade. It was not making the finals of Super 32, I can tell you.
Yeah, I mean, we see it typically. We'll talk about it next week. Kids that pop up early on at these lower weights, 106, 113, 120. But really excited to see how Duke develops.
Absolutely. So moving up to 120, Cooper Flynn of Tennessee/Maryland taking on the #1 ranked wrestler in the freshman class, Mason Gibson. Like I said, even though Cooper Flynn's from Tennessee, he does wrestle in Maryland at McDonough. McDonough's more of like Baltimore area, so I don't know if I can really claim him as a DC area guy, but we got to take what we can get around here. He had a sweep single. They engaged in a very extensive scramble early on, and Flynn was able to get it. Somehow, Gibson then hit a Granby roll to escape with very few seconds left in the first period. So it was actually a pretty lively and action-packed first period for there to only be 3 points on the board. With that being said, Flynn did very solid work on top and pretty much, I think he rode out the entire second period, which is always impressive. And he also put back points on the board. And then one thing we got to touch on is the fact that Flynn got to another sweep single and he had it standing with the leg up in the air. And Gibson hit a backflip out of it. And they stopped the action, even though Flynn seemingly finished the takedown and gave him 1 for penalty instead of the takedown, which I guess was kind of odd. Yes, but in the end, the final score was 6-1 for Flynn, who's very impressive. He's going to be going to Virginia Tech, and I think we're going to see good things out of him at the college level for sure.
Yeah, I was really, really happy. A lot of talk coming in about Mason Gibson, understandably, multiple-time middle school Super 32 champion, coming off a win over Gary Steen, who's a PA state champ, multiple-time PA state champ, and is going to Pittsburgh, is ranked top 5 at the weight. So a big win there, but Cooper Flynn's a guy that, as you know, has been on the scene for 3-4 years now in these big tournaments wrestling for McDonough. And you always look at the results and he's placing at Ironman, he's placing at Beast, he's placing at Super 32. So it was really, really cool to see him break through here. I thought his offense looked fantastic. The first shot he scored on, there was a really, really fun scramble. It actually looked like Gibson was going to come out with the leg at one point, and Flynn was able to kind of kick away and get a reattack there to finish with 2. Flynn looked really long, so it'll be interesting to see whether he's 125 at the next level or is up at 133 or even potentially 141 in time. And I think that length really helped him in this one. I was really surprised at how well Flynn was able to move him around the mat, because that's not something that Steen was able to do, and Steen's a pretty strong kid. But yeah, I think it was nice to see Flynn after years and years of being around the top step of the podium in these sort of tournaments come out on top.
Yeah, I think you hit on something very interesting to me as well, is when we see guys, especially at the lower weight, who are long and lanky, and yet they seemingly have the strength advantage. I mean, Gibson is shorter. He's a fire plug kind of guy, short, powerful. And Flynn kind of looked long, and I thought maybe Gibson was going to be able to get into the ties, but he really wasn't. I mean, it was Flynn controlling the standing portion with his hands, and like I said, he rode tough on top, which you expect a longer guy to do as well.
Yeah, I think as a whole, if you're Virginia Tech coaches, you have to be really happy with this next evolution that Cooper Flynn's taken. He looked as good on his feet as I've seen him in his high school career. Was able to kind of shoot to both sides. Single leg looked fantastic. It really looks like he's kind of taking the next step in his development.
True. And, they may have a bit of a backlog at Virginia Tech at the lower weights coming up. But let's move to 126. And, they may have a backlog coming up in the lower weights at Iowa as well, because Iowa commit Drake Ayala takes out Troy Spratley 3-2. Now, before we get into this, I think last week we addressed your Penn State Homer fandom. And now we're going to talk about your Drake Ayala fandom, which is, he's an Iowa guy. So how do you measure these two things together?
So the first thing I'm going to do here is actually do the opposite. Troy Spratley was a kid that had a really, really impressive middle school career and went to Wyoming SEM as a freshman and wasn't bad, had some really nice results, but struggled a little bit to the adjustment and then is now in Collinsville, Oklahoma, I believe. Check that, maybe not Collinsville, but I know he's in Oklahoma, and has really come into his own since heading back there. And I think sometimes with these kids that are big names out of middle school and they go to these powerhouse programs like a Blair or like a SEM, we kind of, if they don't succeed immediately, they kind of get discarded and pushed by the wayside. So I said to Earl Smith recently at the Open Mat, it was really, really cool for me to see Troy Spratley having that success. As for Ayala, he's just nonstop. I don't know how you don't watch him as a wrestling fan and just get a lot of enjoyment. He was up a weight this week from 120 to 126. And I think that slowed him down, honestly, a little bit. Had some troubles in his semifinal match. I want to say semifinal match, maybe his quarterfinal match. Spratley was able to slow him down a little bit, which, I mean, credit Spratley there, but he just keeps coming. I think that style in terms of having the technique to score many different ways, but also being able to do it for 6 straight minutes is just too much for a lot of kids at that level.
Yeah, I think I described it to somebody I was talking to. It's sort of like controlled aggression disguised as like wild aggression, right? Like he's seemingly coming forward and like being just like go, 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 but it actually is like more refined and more working angles. And in this match, the only takedown that pretty much happened right off the bat. He hit a easy slide by, he got to both ankles and finished out of bounds. Spratley got back into it with 2 escapes at the end of the first period and the second period, and then Ayala got away in the third. Spratley had a very tough ride for the first 30, 40 seconds of the third, but Ayala got away, and then he was able to hold on to the 1-point lead. But I do think, I do worry about his lack of riding, because he didn't really try to ride very much in this match. And I think he was expecting his movement to create more chances, but Spratley was sound defensively and held position very well. So I think, going forward into college, you're going to have to ride, and perhaps the need for that point of riding time will inspire him to do so. But I do worry sometimes about high school guys just cutting right away.
There's a couple of things. First of all, you mentioned the controlled aggression, and he scored off that slide by, and I think a big point of that is he's able to get kids backing up so much that the moment you do have to kind of step into him, he can hit that little throw by. He's just seems to have a really good awareness of where he's at on the mat and his pressure compared to the other guy's pressure. And he moves guys around really comfortably. As for the top wrestling, not his strong suit at the moment. You'd expect if he gets into a room that still has Spencer Lee and Austin DeSanto that maybe that's something that would come along. Reminds me of Roman Bravo Young, who I did not think of as much of a top wrestler coming out of high school. And you watched his true freshman year at Penn State, and it was like, oh, this is an added element. So Ayala's the type of kid that by all accounts works really hard to get better, is a craftsman. And I think given the tools, he's going to become a lot better on top.
All right. So a guy that a lot of people are really high on, obviously, Nic Bouzakis, who is also number 1 in his class, number 1 in the junior class. He puts up 13 points on the board over Chance Lamer. Lamer scored 4 points. He had an escape, and he got a wild reversal as he caught an ankle and was able to step through and get his 2 points there. He also got a somewhat crazy stall point of Bouzakis, I believe.
Yeah, third period. Given the way that the match had gone.
Yeah, I think, obviously for people who have seen Bouzakis come before, he comes forward, he's heavy with the hands, he gets to his leg attacks, he finishes easily. I think the story for this match, if we were to really distill it, was after Lamer got that reversal by kind of scrambling around on the ground, Bouzakis immediately did like sort of a wrist roll action, got to his feet, spun away and scored a takedown, like all within like 8 seconds. So I think it was like he was very upset that he gave up the reversal, and he kind of chased that the rest of the match. But it was one of the more one-sided non-fall matches of the finals.
Yeah, I think anybody that you talk to about that junior class, the first two names that come up are Bouzakis and Ryan Kirkham. One, because they met seemingly 1,000 times now, the same weight, 1-2 in the class, I believe. And it's kind of a lazy compliment on my part, because they obviously have great technique and great feel, but they're both really, really strong and really big and broad for that weight class, even at 132 now. And I think that Bouzakis just bullies people. I think that's why you see Kirkham match up pretty well with him, or at least they're so close, because Kirkham does the same type of thing, where they're both kind of in there just kind of butting heads. But Lamer, who is a very quick kid, very slick offense, former Cadet World team member, it just got bullied. I don't think that he could deal with the heavy hands. I don't think he could deal with being moved around the mat. Got the reversal, but as a whole, I don't think was very comfortable underneath Bouzakis. I think you saw right now, or this week, why Nic Bouzakis is the number one kid in the class, and why he's going to have offers from pretty much everywhere in the country, because he's just comfortable in all three positions.
Absolutely. So here's the question, though, is where is he going to school? He's uncommitted, I believe, correct?
Uncommitted. And as of now, I don't think he's released like a top school list. We've got Kirkham, who's already committed to Lehigh. The usual suspects would be the Penn States, Ohio States, Iowa, Oklahoma State. Hard to see where he fits in. I mean, that sounds silly with his talent, but hard to see where he fits in at Penn State right now with Bo Bartlett and Shane Van Ness in the area. I'm not sure who Ohio State has off the top of my head at 141. I guess Decatur could grow into there. They're going to have probably Sasso at 149, 157 for the next 2-3 years. So Ohio State's one to watch. Maybe a Cornell, obviously a STEM kid you hear and you talk about the work ethic in the classroom and how they're generally pretty well educated, pretty smart kids. But it's going to be very interesting, because I have not heard much in the way of that recruitment.
It is odd for a guy who's ranked as high as he is and has been ranked for so long. All right, let's move to 138. Caden McCrary?
I believe it's McCrary.
McCrary.
I believe there was a slight misspelling.
Yes, I've seen it spelled multiple ways this weekend. He takes on Levi Haines, wins it 8-2. He had a very nifty throw by from the underhook to a single. He hit it twice. A little bit of action controversy in this match, as Haines basically decked McCrary out of bounds after the whistle. It was way late. He gave up a penalty point. But this was pretty much McCrary's match from start to finish. Like I said, takes it 8-2, hit 3 takedowns in the match. And I think, actually, now I think about it, I think all 3 were from the same throw by. So very good, consistent go-to move for the man right there.
Yeah, so while we're in the interest of full disclosure, Levi Haines, a local kid for me, kid I cover generally in the high school season. Looked really good up until then. McCrary, another one of those Georgia kids that I've written about before. That Georgia class is fantastic. I thought McCrary was very smart here. He used Haynes' pressure against him. You mentioned all 3 on the throw by. Got the one late in the first period that I thought was huge. Haynes really struggled to get to his offense, which he hadn't done early in the tournament. Obviously had the penalty point at the end, which I thought was relatively uncharacteristic. You're talking about a kid that's wrestled Kirkham really tough, has lost to Kirkham, I want to say, in each of the 2 years he's lost in the state finals, last year being 5-2. So gave Kirkham a really, really good match. I thought McCrary did a good job of redirecting. I also thought he did a really good job of keeping his composure. I believe McCrary is uncommitted as well. I'll check on that. But just another one of those Georgia kids, and we'll talk about some other ones throughout the podcast, that have really come out either through that Woodward Academy or through the Woodland program and looks really, really strong and comes away with his first title.
Yes, he is number 50 in the senior class and still yet uncommitted. So another guy who probably will be joining up with some program in the very near future. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to undersell Haines. I mean, I think that he was definitely trying to, own the hold up and get in there as much as he could. It's just, sometimes when a guy is real slick and you haven't seen it before with the throw by, it can just catch you. And I don't think that it's possible he didn't hear the whistle. It's possible he was just trying to, move forward as much as possible. But I mean, it was pretty blatant.
It was late. I thought it was late.
Okay.
I mean, it was by no means, it was absolutely a penalty point, and it was late. And
I mean, it was a good double too.
Or dirty necessarily per se. It was just kind of out of aggression.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a little surprising for me from a kid that's relatively quiet, mild-mannered kid.
All right, so 145, we had the singlet matchup of the tournament as Alek Martin with the Trump singlet taking on Rocco Welsh with the Dean Heil singlet. The match that, what was it? Jager said, I believe the match that no one saw coming. So there you go.
The Dean Heil singlet from not the kid that's from St. Paris Graham.
No. Yes.
The St. Paris
Graham. I didn't think about that actually. That's pretty funny. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just wrestling. Gotta love it.
So Martin got on the board early. He was able to get to his low singles, and I think Welsh was thinking that he was going to have the ability to scramble and get points out of this, and Martin finished very well. He went out the back door both times for his first 2 takedowns and scored easy. Welsh had some success on the bottom. Martin rode pretty tough and took a lot of time out of the match. This came down to a final exchange where Martin was in on a single head on the inside, and I think he was just trying to lock in and stall. And Welsh was able to come around a little bit and throw the leg over the top. So it looked like he had boots in for a second. They went to video review and they said that his one leg was over the shoulder and therefore he didn't have both legs in. Therefore, they didn't give him the point. I will say from my vantage point, it did look like it should have been 2. But like I said, we did not have the angle of the other side that would have actually shown where the inside leg was. So tough to say, but Martin ends up taking it 6-4 with that final takedown being disallowed.
I think one of the trends we're starting to see, at least we saw this weekend, is kids who have more big match experience and maybe are a little physically more mature looked better in the match, which you'd expect. But I think the way that wrestling's moving, we have so many of these middle school kids or freshmen or sophomores where we're quick to anoint them as the next best thing. Rocco Welsh, just a sophomore, and I want to say is probably top 10 or top 20 in the class. And looks really good, but Martin is a senior that looked a little more in control, looked a little more physically developed, and was a little more crafty in this one. And I thought that kind of bore itself out in the end.
And I believe he is the number 63 in the senior class, and he is committed to South Dakota State. So that's a guy we're going to see on the college level as well. But I thought that I think the fact that you're keying in on experience is a very good point, because like I said, when I think Welsh had not a poor strategy, but I think he was relying on scrambling ability, and he realized that he was up against a guy who knew how to finish out of those scrambles. And when he changed tactics, he had success, which may have been in combination with Martin kind of slowing down, but in the end, it was just too little too late.
The biggest difference you see to me from kids from a freshman year to a senior year, at least in high school, has a lot to do with not necessarily physical growth or even growth of their game, but understanding development, how the match is developing, and having a game plan. And I think you kind of mentioned it. Welsh kind of went in thinking, okay, I'm going to do A, B, and C. Whereas Martin kind of came in and was like, okay, this is how I'm going to wrestle this match. I'm going to get to this. And it really played out throughout the match. And I think that experience kind of showed itself towards the end.
All right, so we move up to 152 pounds. 2 of the top wrestlers in the junior class, Anthony Perrari, number 7, taking on Caleb Henson, number 11. Henson, another Georgia guy out of the Woodland program. Henson scored a takedown early. He got to an ankle standing, and he was trying to run it down. And Perrari was kind of scooting away, staying on one foot. It got close to a takedown, I think, and then the ref gave the 2. Yep. And then Henson kind of shoved it out of bounds. I'm not sure if it's a takedown, but I also think that it was, this is kind of stupid to say, but I think it was okay the refs gave it to him, because if the ref doesn't call 2 there, I think Henson finishes it. But because the 2 was awarded, he kind of just went out of bounds. So yeah, it's like, on one hand, I don't think it was 2, but if he didn't call it, exactly. So, from there, Perrari went down with about 20 seconds left in the first period, and he caught a leg and rolled through for a reversal, which is pretty impressive. So it ended 2-2 at the end of the first. They both then got their opportunity to go down, both scored, and we went to overtime. After no score in the first overtime, it went to the tiebreakers. Henson, having scored the first takedown, took down, and got away for the upset victory 4-3 over Anthony Perrari.
Ultimate tiebreaker rules in high school are horrible.
So is this the normal high school? Because on the broadcast they were saying it was like a condensed version. Is this?
They may have taken out. They may have taken out a period in between, but normally it goes sudden victory, TB1, TB2, UTB.
Okay, so they just went sudden victory to UTB. Okay.
Yeah, I mean ultimate tiebreaker rules are really, really, really bad, and need to be. I don't know what the solution is, but that's a horrible way to decide matches. As for the match itself, Henson really impressed me positionally. You watch Perrari the rest of the tournament, he was just like a bull coming after kids, getting shots nonstop, pushing guys to the edge. You watch the semifinal match with Pinheiro Johnson, and he was really just able to move him around the mat very easily. And Pinheiro Johnson's a long, strong kid. And I thought Henson was kind of able to hang in the pocket really, really well and frustrate Perrari. Now, that being said, there's really not much splitting them here. Went to UTB, got decided by an escape. But the fact that Perrari, who has been overwhelming kids, wasn't able to do that to Henson was not necessarily surprising to me, but impressive.
Yeah, I think Perrari, I think it was just kind of like athleticism and explosion versus just solid fundamentals. If Perrari was shooting a lot from distance, he seemed to be exploding into his takedowns, and he was visibly frustrated because Henson was just keeping position, good stance, moving when he had to. And I thought that, sometimes that's just enough. And I agree that it was kind of unsatisfying because it was just an escape in the one period. I think at least both guys should get the opportunity to go down. But yeah, and I mean, like I said, we shouldn't expect much to separate them if it's number 7 and number 11 in the class. So 2 guys going on to bigger and better things for sure.
Yeah, Perrari, obviously a kid that's with his brother being at Oklahoma State now and his brother being the number 1 kid in the country for a while, is going to have a lot of eyes on him.
So they said on the broadcast that he was trying to decide between Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and another school, which I thought would be very interesting if we had one kid at Oklahoma State and another brother at Oklahoma.
I'd be very surprised if he did. Be very, very surprised if he did not end up at Oklahoma State.
Especially because the whole family already moved to Stillwater. So, yeah. Anyway, moving up to 160. And I think this is a match that opened my eyes to Dean Hamiti taking on Matthew Singleton. Singleton got a quick single and finished it out of bounds, but it was kind of the thing where you saw that Hamiti has sort of an unnatural and absurd balance. And he scored an escape right away after nearly getting a reversal. He then hit a very nasty ankle pick where he basically just shoved the man in the chest and picked the ankle and took him down.
Did Singleton know that the match was so just before that they had gone out of bounds?
Right, yeah.
Well, Singleton had gone out of bounds, and he almost came back to the center like he thought that it was blown out of bounds. There was no whistle. It was clear, the ref pointed him back to the center.
Yeah.
But I don't mean to take anything away from Hamiti, who for me was the OW. I don't know whether he actually won it. But that exchange was very strange because Singleton almost walked back up straight up and down. And the way I saw it, I was like, oh, did he get a rolling start? Not realizing they were still
right. There was no start. It was just a rolling start in the match. Yeah. So from there, he got his opportunity on top, and he basically went right away into a crossface cradle. He got the 3 back points, time ran out before he could get the fall. Hamiti went down to start the second period. He was able to get to his feet, sort of turn in and put himself into almost like a double leg position. And then he stepped over right into the mounts and picked a side and picked up the fall. So we were in a match that was less than 2 full periods. We got to see ridiculous offense on the feet, ridiculous offense from the top position, and scrambly defense turned into offense on the bottom. I mean, for a match, like I said, for a match under 4 minutes long, it was absolutely absurd that we saw this much out of this guy. And I mean, this is the kind of guy that people like to watch for sure.
So, Richard, Dean Hamiti is going to Wisconsin. You're telling me he has very good balance and very good defense when somebody's on his leg. He's very long and very good on top, and he's probably going to be wrestling 165 or 174. Who at Wisconsin do you think that reminds you of?
The Wick guy?
Yeah, just a little bit like Evan Wick.
Yeah.
I am super, super excited. I mean, I was a Dean Hamiti fan beforehand, but this was the best version of him. He blew through this tournament. You can go back and look on Flow Arena. I want to say he had multiple falls, multiple bonus point matches, was really good on top. was incredibly long. I'm very, very excited to see what happens if he can get in the room with Evan Wick and pick up some tools of the trade, because that's going to be a really, really fun guy for Chris Bono and John Readers to kind of mold and turn into maybe their next title contending guy.
I mean, obviously, I think he compares very well to Evan Wick. I was kind of joking around with that slow play, but I think one of the names that really came to mind watching him, and it may not be complete, was Kellen Russell, because when you watch Kellen Russell wrestle, it was just like, how does he stay on his feet there? You know, Tim Johnson was always talking about the
just
gyro.
a ridiculous athlete in terms of their balance.
But then on top of that, we also saw that cross-face cradle. And, you know, I know as a Penn State guy, you can see
out of nowhere.
Guys who can do the cross-face cradle, that in and of itself is the equalizer. I mean, we're talking about Shakur Rashid, Taylor Venz, but to have that and the scrambling ability, and like I said, Matthew Singleton, I've seen him wrestle before.
Yep,
solid guy,
another Georgia
very
kid.
long, very strong, great positionally. We talked about how Henson's fundamentals against Perrari really stifled and shut him down. Those fundamentals did not save Singleton against Hamiti. So.
Yeah, I love Singleton as a prospect in terms of his length and his explosiveness on his feet. And the moment this got to the mat in particular, he just had nothing for Hamiti. I thought, like I said, Dean Hamiti's got nothing short of fantastic high school accolades, but this was the best that I had seen him in his high school career. If you're a Badgers fan, you got to be really, really excited right now.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go to 170. Manuel Rojas taking on James Rowley. First period ended without any score. There was one big scramble. Both guys were legit in on legs. Didn't really work out. Rojas took down. He got away after Rowley tried to ride legs. That period ended. Rojas got a nice high crotch at the end of the period, but he wasn't able to score. Rowley got his opportunity to go down. He got up after Rojas tried to hold him down with a head lever. So we're looking at 1-1 in the third period, and Rojas was able to get a shot from space. Rowley defended it. As he was spinning behind, he caught Rowley's leg and then finished along the edge. So it's actually a pretty good sequence for both guys there. But Rojas was the one who got the takedown. Rowley got away with 4 seconds left in the match, but obviously that was too little. 3-2 for Rojas was the final score.
Yeah, Rojas and another kid, top 50, I believe he's number 41 right now in your junior rankings. Detroit Central Catholic kid, so coming through a powerhouse program in Michigan and been on the scene for a little while. This was, I think, I would call it next to Fargo, probably his breakout performance, at least on the national scene. He's kind of been behind Cam and me in terms of the big gun that DCC lineup. Solid kid, explosive kid, really strong. I honestly thought in this match that Rowley looked really good because I expected a little more out of Rojas. I thought Rowley, particularly defensively, didn't give up much and didn't give many openings. But Rojas is an uncommitted kid, looked really solid, going to be tough to score on, can score in a number of different ways, solid on top. Just a really, what you should call professional performance, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see some high school matches that are wide open and people are scoring. This was a very college-y type match. Both guys had their plan. There was good defense on both sides, two solid fundamental wrestlers, and you're going to get 3-2 matches out of guys like that. So I think it was a good showing for both, but Rojas was able to pull it out. All right, so let's talk about this crazy match at 182. Brian Soldano pins Bennett Berge. And I think right away you could tell that something was up because Berge, well, let's start out. Soldano shoots from space and whiffs completely. Berge spins behind for the score. As he's spinning, Soldano basically kind of turns to his back.
It goes to his, yeah.
Yeah, and he starts working some elevator sweep thing, like it's a jiu-jitsu match. He didn't give up back points, and he eventually escaped, but you kind of knew that there was odd stuff going on. Berge then got in on a blast double and finished it. Nearly got caught in a chest wrap, but he stayed out of it. And then things kind of started going downhill. Berge he capped a whizzer like he was going to go over, and he ended up getting rolled through to his back. And then so we ended the first period, I believe it was 6-4.
6-5, I believe.
Yeah, and so then Soldano rode very well from the top position, and then Berge hit a reversal and then rode out the period. The third period was more of the same. Soldano drug his way out of a front headlock and got behind for the score. And then he was doing a claw ride, and Berge tried to hip over the top and put himself right on his own back, and Soldano got the fall. Yeah, it was a wild match. I don't know if I'm doing it justice with the recap, but there were a lot of weird positions, and Soldano's very confident with his balance and his ability to stay on top.
A strange match. You talked to our buddy Ian, or our buddy Jagger earlier. Big Soldano fan. Apparently Soldano is like known for being kind of high flying and all over the place, which he certainly was in this one. Berge comes out right away, gets a go behind, which when you have a name like that, related to his younger brother who's known for older brother who's known for the go behind, you kind of expect it. Almost looked like he was able, like you said, kind of kept that whizzer and stepped over and looked like he was going to get back points or even get the fall. And Soldano just like shoots an underhook on the other side. And again, it was much like if anybody's ever done any jiu-jitsu, like rolled across his back for a sweep. And it looked for a while there that Soldano might get the fall in the first period. Really impressed with Soldano on top. Berge looked pretty good from neutral. Just, I don't know how to explain this one, how to evaluate it, because whatever Soldano did, other than his top game and how good he was riding, you would not advise somebody to wrestle the way that Brian Soldano wrestles, but it's certainly incredible entertainment factor.
Yeah, because it was like, it wasn't fully a leg ride. It wasn't fully a claw ride. And he spent like large periods seeming like he was about to be reversed. Like he would be like sitting on his butt. And then, like, it was strange. Very, very weird. But so, not a guy I would want to wrestle. For those of you who have the ability, go back and watch that match, because I mean, for me, it was the best finals match by a good deal. Absolutely. All right, so we're going to move now to 195 pounds. Christian Carroll taking on Gavin Nelson. And this was a very tough match to watch for me because Christian Carroll was a big, muscled-up, pale guy, and the other guy was from Minnesota. So I didn't know what was going on.
Brain was broken.
Yeah, I just like, oh, we got mini Brock Lesnar, but he's not from Minnesota. Tough to say. But yeah, Christian Carroll, absolute physical beast for someone who's still in high school. A little slow pace. Towards the end of the the second period, Carroll was able to dive in from space and score. He got caught in the front headlock, but he dragged out, got on top, and finished the period on top, rode for about a minute. So impressive takedown and ride in the second. He also got an escape in the third when Nelson cut him to try to get back in the match, 3-1. And I think Carroll is a guy. There was not a huge action in this match, but I think when you're that big and you're that strong, and you also have the ability to pull out a scrambled takedown, I think that's a very impressive performance.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the semifinal, Nelson was able to get by Seth Shoemate, who was very recently the number one kid in the country. And you want to talk about kids who are big and strong, Shoemate's certainly both of those things. So I think it was a really good job of Carroll potentially going back and watching that match and saying, hey, what can I take from that? Because both Shoemate and Nelson, at least looking at previous rankings, are the two more heralded wrestlers. I think some people probably thought that once Nelson got by Shoemate, he was probably a big favorite in this one. But really, Carroll was able to shut him down offensively, whether that was Nelson just kind of being a little surprised or not able to deal with that strength. But I think it was a really good job for Carroll in the biggest match that I can recall him wrestling. Wrestling composed, wrestling within himself, and wrestling to his strengths.
Absolutely. A very similar match at 220 pounds. Bennett Tabor takes a 3-0 score over Noah Pettigrew. Scored a takedown early in the match with an underhook throw-by to an ankle, finished through the whizzer. Very impressive offense for a guy at that size, 220. And then he was also able to ride out the first period, and then he rode out the second period, didn't give up a point, got his chance to go down in the third and scored 3-0. Anytime you can shut a guy out, that's always impressive. I think this was a very good showing for Tabor, a guy that I've been watching for years. I think he's a very solid wrestler, good ride, good fundamentals on the feet, and controlled the match from start to finish.
Pettigrew is an interesting prospect, another Georgia kid, which we've said probably 6 times on this podcast. Up at Blair Academy, a former 195 cadet Fargo champ, I believe, or Fargo runner-up, who's kind of struggled a little bit since going up to 220, which sounds silly when you're ranked top 10 in the country, but it's not necessarily having having the success that he had at 195 and really struggled to get anything going offensively here. I don't know whether the kind of way has slowed him down. You would think he would have a speed advantage coming up because he looked really good at 195, but Tabor really controlled the pace of this one, moved Pettigrew around easily, looked really good on top. I was really impressed with Bennett Tabor, who, like you said, has kind of been steady for much of the last 2-3 years of his high school career.
I think for a guy, there is no 220 at college. That 220 does project towards heavyweight, and being able to apply the kind of game plan he did, I think that's where heavyweight's going, and I think that shows well. Because I do worry sometimes about the 220 guys dealing with the size, but when you can ride like that, and you control ties and score with a big guy takedown off an underhook like that, I think that's definitely.
Yeah, I am not saying that he's going to be this because it's an unfair projection, but you look at like Mason Paris' senior year, the 220 kid, where he was able to kind of use underhooks to move guys around, control kind of the center of the mat and deal with that and wrestle smart. I think that projects well if you're able to do that now and then can get into a college room and maybe even add a little size and add something to your game.
Well, speaking of size, we've reached the 285-pound weight class, and my man Hayden Kopis is a large individual. He takes a 3-1 victory over Chase Horn, reversing a recent result where Horn won. Horn, clearly a little bit undersized here compared to Kopis. It was 1-1 in the third period. Horn got into a nice sweep single, got to his feet. Kopis was able to get his foot back, pinned it on the ground, and spun away for the score. Rode out the final 42 seconds to take it 3-1. I think sometimes heavyweight is kind of unfair in that it hurts the guy who's going for offense. But at the same time, Horn that's his game. He's going to be an undersized heavyweight. He's got to go for those leg attacks. He got in a couple times. Impressive that Kopis was able to defend and, stay in the match. I mean, a big guy moving around that much, good cardio from him. And, to finish it off with a ride, completely iced the match without giving up the stand-up. We're looking at a guy, I think he has to be number one in the country now at heavyweight, right?
Yep.
Because after he beat Hamilton in this tournament,
yep.
Horn had beaten Hamilton, and he got the revenge on Horn for the previous loss. So Hayden Kopis, number one heavyweight in the country.
And another kid heading to Wisconsin, if you're a Wisconsin fan, you had to be watching these finals and just licking your lips in terms of the talent you guys have coming in. I think right now what you see at heavyweight, at least nationally, is you see three at least top guys in terms of Horn, Hamilton, and Kopis, who maybe aren't to the level of recent guys where we've seen with a Kirk Flight or a Paris or a Stevenson, but you've got that tier that's clearly, to me, separated themselves from the rest of the country and are wrestling 1- and 2-point matches with each other. I mean, you could throw them in a round robin and they may just continue to beat each other. Kopis, to me, first of all, you mentioned a mountain of a man, which going from Trent Hilger to Hayden Kopis, Wisconsin's just going from one ginormous heavyweight to another. But he uses his size well. I know it sounds really silly, but he, much like Colton Schultz, controls the center of the mat, uses pressure and understands when guys are pushing back into him that he can use that leverage or use the guy pressuring back into him against his opponent. I thought he wrestled a really smart match, made nice adjustments from the last time they wrestled. Horn didn't really come all that close to scoring, which you don't see a ton. But yeah, I think a really impressive performance by both. And like I said, those three guys, I think you kind of throw them under a blanket in the top three.
Yeah, and I think Horn lost this match. I think, dealing with guys that size, even though he had a win over Kopis, it's going to be something he's going to have to work on if he's going to be undersized. But I do think going to that program at NC State and just the way they've been able to mold and work on their big guys, not just the heavyweight, but also 97, I'm really excited about him at the next level. I think he's a guy who, maybe on like a Jordan Wood trajectory where he comes in as like a high level prospect, takes some lumps as a freshman, gets more size, gets more into it. And then by the time he's a senior, I think he's a title contender. I think Horn is really going to be something with that program at NC State for sure.
Yeah, and just a junior too as well. I believe that Hayden Kopis is a senior. So there's going to be a little bit more physical development there, I think, in high school, and particularly when he gets to the college level, like you said, with how good they've done with their 97 heavies. A kid that may not come out right away as a freshman, like we saw with Gable Stevenson, like we saw with Mason Paris, like we may see with Greg Kirkleet, and just like blow people away. But 2 to 3 years in, we're going to look up and be like, oh, you know who's in the top 5 nationally? It's Chase Horn.
There you go. All right. Well, I survived the 30 million high school matches. I did it. Thank you. I'm sure you're proud.
I am quite.
All right. So anything else you want to throw in? I mean, I think I've been debating saying anything, but I have to say the COVID protocols left something to be desired here. I don't want to dwell on it.
There were COVID protocols?
Yeah, I know. And I think I would feel bad morally as a person if I did not mention that it was kind of hard to see at times. Yes, there were some masks there. Yes, the referees had masks, but
sort of, kind of.
Yeah, sort of the one ref taking off the mask in order to make announcements, thus defeating the purpose of the mask. Yes.
If you guys want to go out and go to wrestle, by all means do it. I am not here to tell you what to do if anybody's listening. They wrestled or they had a kid that wrestled, but don't put yourselves at risk. I enjoy watching you wrestle, and I like most of you. Yeah. So if you get a chance to do it, we want to continue to have these events. Be smart about it, guys.
Absolutely. We'll watch, want everyone to be safe. That's right. So this weekend, we got the Hawkeye Wrestling and the Wacky Flow tournament. So that'll be exciting. I don't know what we're going to do about that. We'll figure it out. Yeah. Anyway, we've reached the time where we go to plugs. Clay, what are you plugging this week?
Again, always Black Shoe Diary stuff. Right. We're going to have some wrestling stuff locally. If any of you are in South Central Pennsylvania, check me out in the Gettysburg Times or at Penn Live. Working on something, hopefully to get set up an interview with Bo Nickel for a story on his new American Top Team gym. You'll be able to find that probably at the Bloody Elbow on SB Nation. I will have more information on our next episode, but that's something I'm really excited about. So stay tuned for that.
All right. So this past week, I was tweeting up a storm at UFC 254. If you want to check out the stats and recap from that, it's pretty laid out on my Twitter. I should have some more stuff coming up this week for Anderson Silva versus Uriah Hall. That's at Richard A. Mann with 2 N's. Also going to be doing previews on intermatwrestle.com for both the Wacky Flow tournament and the Hawkeye Wrestling Club event. So I have my work cut out there. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The wrestling keeps on. It seems to be picking up some momentum. Good to see it. And, like I said, with the exception of the lack of COVID protocols, I thought the Super 32 finals were very, very great. And I'm glad you forced me into recording this show. Yeah,
it was a really good event. Kind of surprised to see the number of kids that had turned out, but it felt like a normal Super 32. So a little bit of weekend of a normal feeling is always kind of nice.
All righty. Well, we'll play it by ear what we're going to do for the next show. But anyway, we'll talk to you guys later.
Peace out.